Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is formulate. Let's take a moment to look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear formulate used is to mean to create or devise a plan, a strategy, or something else similar, and you're generally doing it in a very methodical way. So we're very step by step, thinking about all the little details. A second way you'll hear formulate used is to mean to express an idea in a rather concise and again, systematic way. Right? So I'm not jumping kind of from idea to idea. You can see kind of a logical flow to what it is I'm expressing. And a third way you might hear formulate used is to mean to prepare something according to a particular formula. So, we're going to talk about that word formula a little later when we discuss some related words. But for now, you might think of this a bit like ingredients and very particular amounts of ingredients. Okay. You should also know that formulate is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, I need to drop the E because I have a vowel, a consonant, and then an E. I drop my E and then I add ing to make formulating. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are just going to require me to add a D at the end since this verb already ends in an E. Now my base verb, formulate, ends in a T sound. And this means that when I add my ed ending, I'm going to add an extra syllable to the word. So I'm going to say id as I make those sounds for the ed ending. So my past tense and participle form of the verb should sound like this. Formulated, formulated. Okay, I hope you can hear that id on the end of it. Now, there are no additional phrasal verbs that we need to study, so instead, we can practice our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to practice the simple past tense and the simple future using will. Let's start with the simple past tense. We use this verb tense to describe actions that occurred at some known point in the past. You may see time signals, words like yesterday or last week, last month, um, perhaps even a specific date as well. Now, those won't be in every single simple past tense sentence, but it can help you understand a longer text, a longer paragraph, or also understand a conversation where someone is discussing something that occurred at a known point. To make simple past tense sentences, I start with my subject and then I use my ed form of the verb. And this is true no matter what the subject is, so I don't have any additional changes here. I'm going to keep following the same pattern. So, an example of an affirmative sentence in the simple past tense might be, the company formulated its new sunscreen with ingredients that will nourish endangered coral reefs, not contribute to their bleaching and dying. As I looked at some different examples, I thought this was kind of an interesting one. There's a few companies, I believe, that are trying to do this, but one in particular was talking about how harmful some of the chemicals can be in many sunscreens. So then when we put that on our body, we go into the water, into ocean waters, our sunscreen runs off, and it can have a really bad effect to bad effect on coral reefs. This one, however, they're saying can actually help them sort of flourish and grow. Now let's talk about a negative simple past tense sentence. To do this, I start with my subject. I'm going to use did not and then the base verb. You might also hear the contraction didn't and then the base verb. An example of this might be, they didn't formulate clear questions for the interviewees. So here, maybe we had some really bad interview experiences, and it could be because the questions were not logical or clear as they as the interviewers kind of prepared for this, or maybe the problem is they didn't prepare. Um, Now, let's talk about yes or no questions in the simple past tense. To do this, I start with did, then I'm going to have my subject, and then the base verb. So, the thing I always like to point out to my students, notice the only time I'm using the ed form of the verb is in the affirmative. I go back to the base verb with no suffix in the negative and with my yes or no questions. So let's read that last example question. Did a dietitian formulate a new plan for him after his surgery? Sometimes people will have certain medical conditions that require surgery, and then post surgery, they may need to change their diet to help with their recovery, or could be just a complete lifestyle change post surgery. Now, let's take a moment to talk about the simple future. Today, we're going to make sentences with will. And it's really common to hear people make predictions. So they're expressing their ideas of what they think will happen in the future. You might also hear it as people make promises, or they make an offer to someone else. Occasionally, you'll hear people use it to discuss their plans as well, but that's a little less common. The nice thing about will and the simple future is that my structure, my pattern is going to stay the same no matter what my subject is. Okay, so let's take a look at an affirmative sentence. China will formulate a plan to promote research and innovation of 6G mobile technologies. Okay. This goes back to our first definition, creating a plan. Now, if I want to make a negative simple future sentence, my structure is to have my subject, then will not, and then the base verb. You might also hear the contraction won't. This is with a long O sound. I have many students tell me this word can be easily confused with W-A-N-T or W-E-N-T, but here, won't, long O. Hope you can hear that. Let's take a look at an example sentence. The company won't formulate the cleaning products with dangerous chemicals. So they might be saying this as they're expressing a promise to their customers. Okay. Lastly, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, I start with will, then I'm going to have my subject, and then the base verb. My last example is, will the new coach formulate game plans with her assistant? Right? So again, we're back to that idea of creating kind of a strategy here. And here we're kind of curious, is this coach going to work with the assistants to make the plan? Or maybe she'll be working individually. Who knows? Now let's spend a little time continuing to look at some words that are related to our verb formulate. And the first word we're going to look at is the word formula. This is a noun and it can have a number of different meanings. I've limited us to just four. Otherwise, I thought this might become a really long video. So, one way you hear formula used as a noun is to refer to a mathematical relationship or rule. Many times you see it expressed in symbols. So, this can be like letters that represent something. An example of this might be the formula to find the area of a rectangle is length times width. So sometimes you see this as kind of L and then an X, meaning the times, and W, right? That is an example of a formula. A second way you hear the noun formula used is to refer to that list of ingredients that are in something. An example of this, Coca-Cola won't reveal its secret formula to produce its soda. There are many companies that are kind of famous to having a secret formula, some kind of secretive groups of ingredients or amounts of ingredients to produce something. A third way you might hear formula used is to refer to liquid food for babies. So it's produced to be sort of like cow's milk. It's generally a substitute for breast milk from nursing moms. So you might hear of baby formula. And I've got an example sentence here. Last year, there was a large recall of infant formula. So here, this is where we're asking or telling people to return a product because it is not safe. And that is what happened here in the United States. A fourth way, you might hear the noun formula used to refer to a method, a statement, some type of procedure that we use in order to reach something, to achieve something. Many people will ask, is there a formula to achieve peace, right? Is there a certain method we can follow in order to make sure or ensure that we have a peaceful environment? The next related word we're going to talk about is the noun formulation. This is the action of creating some type of plan or creating some type of material or mixture according to those specified ingredients and in particular amounts. So, an example of this might be they're going to describe the pharmaceutical formulation process, right? And pharmaceutical is generally referring to medicine, medication, right? And those, the things we take on a daily basis, they have been tested and they need just so much of these certain things to produce the right effects. So that sentence is describing kind of the process an organization might go through to create medicine. The last word I'm going to leave you with today is the adjective formulaic. Now, this adjective is used to describe something we think is very predictable, right? So we think things are happening in accordance with certain rules, and therefore it's like, ah, I know what's going to happen. So many times when we use this adjective, it's not a compliment. It's not usually celebrated. It's kind of like, oh, this is formulaic. I know exactly what's going to happen. So, an example of this, you might hear somebody say something like, I can't stand to watch one more formulaic romantic comedy. So here, this person might be talking about a particular style of movie. Maybe you've heard them called rom-coms. So taking those first three letters of those two words, romantic comedy, I know what's going to happen, right? They're going to act like they don't like each other, and then eventually they're going to end up together. Ugh, boring, right? It's formulaic. Thank you so much for watching my video today. I know these can seem pretty formulaic in terms of following the same rules and style, but nevertheless, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day.